am I? I am a little miracle. 162 centimeters little to be precise. Okay, and with these on, 172 centimeters. And if reason alone were to apply, I would not be here before you today. I was conceived a female, destined for abortion or desertion in a country that has the highest female infanticide rates around the world. Yet, I was born in 1983 to a poor, Hindu, conservative, non-English speaking, scheduled caste family. And scheduled caste, by the way, is the lowest ranking caste in the Indian caste system. I was born and raised in the back streets of Mumbai. My family came from the unelectrified mud hut village in Gujarat, West India. And they survived, and we all survived, the urban environment precisely and primarily because of financial contributions and gifts we received from the intricate web of the Indian social system. During times of dire need, even our milkman lent us money to cover for school fees. And then there were times when I would study by candlelight when we could not afford to pay electricity bills. As a family of 5, we grew up in a one-bedroom flat in constant poverty and debt. And yes, my brother, sister, and I, we slept on the same bed until I was 24 and when I left home to move overseas. So, the point I'm trying to make here is that the underprivileged bottom 1% out there, I have directly lived and experienced that. And I was determined as a global citizen, but also as just a simple human who could do something creative, that I would take responsibility to bring us up and out of poverty. And my various inspirational adventures and my pursuit and my investment in my personal and professional growth has directly and completely changed who I am and how I live internally and externally. 5 years ago, with even 5 of you in this room, I would not know what to speak. And now, I have completely transformed from a shy, meek, mild, socialized little Indian girl to a self-transcending, confident, a little bit more balanced than before, global citizen. I have been acquiring my inner and outer million. And now my journey to give this back to society has begun. In essence, my journey is the transition from the bottom 1% to the top 1% for 100% of humanity in one lifetime. So why am I here today? I am here as a little miracle to call forth a large miracle. I call for the transfer of power from the current baby boomer and Gen X generation to the millennial generation. Even in the history that we know, the founding fathers of the new America that we know were in their early 20s and 30s when the foundations of their great nation was laid after the revolution in 1776. What if the foundation for the new necessary global order needs to be laid by the millennials themselves for this new millennium to come? And to share how we do that, I will present my case in 4 parts. And I'm confident that by the time I finish, you will agree with this radical view, and if you don't agree, at least this talk will have created new perspectives for you. First, who are we millennials? Well, to start with, millennials are people born between 1980 and 2000, but I would say all of us who are below 35 years of age. We are the most written on and the most researched generation ever. There are studies that say we are either the best generation or the worst generation. There is nothing in between about us. There is a Time magazine quote which says, we are the me generation, a lazy, narcissistic, entitled tribe. And then there is another study which says, we are the generation we, a spiritual, tech-savvy, responsible and social clan. And yes, we are not a coherent bunch yet, as many of us from the developed and the developing nations have been brought up and raised by different means and cultures, and so this convergence is coming and is being expedited by the technological gap. But the essence that binds us is that we are hungry to learn, keen to experiment. We do not follow norms and trends that have been laid by the previous generations. We believe in entrepreneurship and collective action, and most of all, and most importantly, we want to have an impact. And by 2020, we will be more than 50% of the global workforce, and thereby also the largest consumer class. In a nutshell, as millennials, we represent an era of new talent. In this second part of my talk, I'm going to shed some light on what are the key priorities and challenges that we as millennials prioritize, and what is the foundational basis for these priorities and challenges. The four major categories are planet, people, purpose, and profit. The first, planet. An overwhelming number of millennials consider environmental protection, climate change, and biodiversity loss and resource scarcity as their number one priority. Planet. That was planet. People. Inequality in income and unemployment are the second biggest concerns millennials raised. Purpose. Personal learning and development is very important, and so is learning and coaching. More than 50% of the millennials in a study said that that is what concerned them and that is what they would invest their time in. And most millennials also consider it important that they work with transparent and ethical corporations. And finally, profit. This was of little priority to many millennials. And only it was important in as far as it sustained their cost and standard of living. And I think we all concur that profit, for the sake of profit, has got us where we are right now. And profit at this cost, is not profit, it is loss. And so, let's look at, are these key priorities and challenges that millennials say that they have, are they indeed genuine or spurious? IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, confirms that the human influence on climate system is clear and impact is being observed across all continents and oceans. We are consuming the very foundation of the planet that we live on, and faster than the planet can replenish itself. If we continue our business as usual treatment of the planet, our generation will face severe ecological collapse and at the same time resulting peace and security and development issues. And here is the good news. We do not have many separate problems to solve. We have many symptoms of one problem. The problem is we still live on a planet that operates on the economic logic of that is maladapted and is not in line with the natural laws. It is formed on the primitive worldview that fulfilling short-term desires and short-term desires and requirements over the responsibility to collective well-being of the planet and the ecosystems we live in. We live in a world of unparalleled economic wealth, and yet it is so skewed. It's more skewed than ever before in the history of man. The top 1% now own the same amount as the bottom 99% put together own. And then the total value of international trade and that is the actual goods and services that have been transacted on amounts only to 1.4% of all foreign exchange transactions. The rest is all speculative transactions on derivatives and monetary engineering that do not largely serve any useful social purpose. We are inheriting an economic value system that values more a dead fish over an alive one, a dead tree over a forest, sick people over healthy ones, war and threats of war over peace. A system that privatizes profits and socializes losses. A disconnected system that works on the economic logic that companies pursue unlimited growth on a planet of finite resources. The only way to prevent this inevitable collapse is to fundamentally redesign the economic logic, align it with natural laws, and have businesses worldwide to support and address this. And now, in this third part of my talk, I'm going to look into the gap. What has been most fascinating while I was doing the research for this talk and collating reference material was how much information does not exist. When Lord Mervyn Davies and Sheryl Sandberg wanted to put forth the case to empower women and have them in leadership positions, they at least had data and statistics to back their sense of urgency. Do we know, for example, how many millennials hold formal decision-making roles in the key decision-making structures of the planet today? How many millennials represent the top echelons of parliaments, cabinets, embassies worldwide? In boardrooms, public listed companies, and institutional investors? In the top leadership tiers of UN, IMF, World Bank? To my knowledge, such data is not publicly available yet. This blind spot highlights many inherent assumptions, I would say patronizing assumptions, of the current system. It points that we as millennials are not even being envisioned as top leaders. In fact, we are being concerned or treated as objects to be managed or to be sold stuff to. Let's take it this way. When you walk into a shop and you want to buy a gadget or a device to conduct your 21st century life most effectively, which one would you choose? A 1984 Macintosh or the latest laptop? Would you choose a 1973 first prototype of a handheld Motorola? Or would you choose the latest Android or iPhone? Of course, unless you're building a vintage collection, we would all choose the latter. Yet, when it comes to leading our nations, communities, and organizations, why do we still have baby boomers and Gen X leaders leading us? What if we represent the new software or the new upgraded version of humanity? Why don't we tap into the fresh blood, new energy, creativity that is available to us? The biggest lesson for the baby boomer generation is step up or move over. And this afternoon, I'm sorry to say, or I'm pleased to say, you have many Rumi fans. I quote Rumi here, who instructs, And this is again a lesson for the baby boomer generation. Sit. Be still. Listen. You are drunk, and we are at the edge of the roof. I believe that what we are capable of doing now has the opportunity to deeply have an empowering impact on the millennium to come. And for this final part of the talk, is a call to action on a ground-up redesign of human civilization, and specifically how to engage people of our generation in that process. Here are two ideas I consider word spreading. And these ideas are not just word spreading. I do believe that they have an inherent potential in them to ignite action worldwide. The first, Sustainable Development Goals. The complex global challenges that we currently face, to resolve them, what is absolutely necessary is that we as a human species around the world anchor ourselves to a common goal and a common vision. The base architecture for moving and transitioning to a more sustainable state already exists. The UN General Assembly will replace the Millennial Development Goals with the Sustainable Development Goals by the end of 2015. The goals affirm 17 action-oriented plans that are universally applicable, and they are all geared to, or they are all at least preparing themselves to address key issues and priorities, some of which I have discussed before, but also around ending poverty and hunger, improving education and health, etc., etc. And so, aligning with the Sustainable Development Goals and the direct responsibility for their attainment needs to be embedded and integrated into the existing corporate, financial, and regulatory reporting, listing, and funding requirements. When we so anchor ourselves to a common goal and a common vision, and we all pursue that in every endeavor, through every endeavor that we pursue, the Sustainable Development Goals are attained, I see large miracles happening. It's time that we keep our eyes on the horizon, not just on the bottom line. The future of business is to make the future its business. And now, let's bring the millennials, shall we? Let's make it mandatory for public and large institutions worldwide to have at least one millennial representative on their board and in key committees, with the primary role to serve as the Chief Millennial Sustainability Officer, with the responsibility to align the company strategy and action with the Sustainable Development Goals, and then to be the conduit for ensuring the long-term success of the company, the people, and the planet. I also propose that NGOs, governments, and other intergovernmental bodies like the UN, IMF, World Bank, etc., they also make it mandatory for every key country, forum, and delegation to have one millennial leader. The government of Hungary, Wales, and the European Union are already appointing a future generation commissioner. All such millennial representatives can then literally interconnect laterally as a global web of millennial future guardians. And with our natural ability to connect and with our technical prowess, we will soon be bouncing each other's ideas and effectively leveraging off each other's perspectives. So, proactively placing millennials now in positions of executive and strategic power and holding them accountable to deliver on the SDGs is one way that I see we can create a true future, not just for us, but for the futures to come. We can create within our lifetime a green economy on a blue planet. To conclude, I say, the millennial generation is inheriting a damaged future, and as the most tangible representatives of the future now, we are now actively engaged and put in strategic positions of power and decision making so that we may make these changes within our lifetime. And as they say, if it is the right thing to do, we have every right to do it. I end my talk with another little short personalization which links to my introduction. I did say that I was a little miracle, here to call forth a large miracle. I believe that each one of you is a little miracle, here to elicit your own large miracle. And the only thing that stops us now is fear. And I echo the bidding of Hafiz, another Rumi poet, another Sufi poet, who says, "Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like you to live in better conditions." And to conclude, I invite you all to boldly embrace the little miracle in you. Thank you.